The car pulls up the long, gravel drive, tires crunching slow, loud in the sudden, heavy silence. It's his car. My hands are slick against the steering wheel, even though the morning air is crisp, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp earth. My heart is a trapped bird, beating wild against my ribs, but my face feels frozen, carved from ice. Ahead, through the trees, the barn roof appears, sharp and red against the gray sky. The stable, his stable, the one he bought her horse a home in. He's here. I know he is. I saw the schedule. I parked down the road, waited, watched his familiar black sedan turn in. Now it's my turn. The contract sits heavy on the passenger seat, a stack of papers that feel more powerful than any emotion I've ever held. This is it. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. I remember standing in our kitchen, the early sun casting long shadows across the floorboards.
It was a Tuesday.
Or maybe a Wednesday. The days blurred together before everything changed, a soft, hazy watercolor of routine and quiet assumptions. We had a life. A comfortable one. A house that was perhaps too big now that the kids were grown but felt solid, a testament to years of building something. He worked hard. I worked less demanding hours now, focused on things I enjoyed. We'd sit on the porch in the evening sometimes, talking about nothing important, or just watching the fireflies flicker in the garden. There were trips planned, retirement accounts growing. It felt settled. Safe. He wasn't a demonstrative man, not with grand gestures or flowery words. His affection was in the steady presence, the way he'd make coffee on Saturday mornings, the solid weight of his hand on my back as we walked. We had our rhythm, our unspoken language. Like any marriage, there were quiet compromises, moments of frustration that passed like summer storms, periods where we felt more like roommates than lovers. But the foundation felt strong. Or I believed it felt strong. I built my world on that belief, brick by careful brick, for 25 years. Horses weren't really part of my world. I knew he occasionally invested in things, stocks, properties, the kind of careful moves men like him made with their money. It was abstract to me, just numbers on a screen, assets growing. I trusted him with it.
Completely.
Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner. The first crack appeared not with a bang, but a whisper. A credit card statement, accidentally left on the counter. It was a supplementary card, one I rarely saw. A single-line item jumped out. A figure so large it seemed like a typo. $700,000. The vendor name didn't make sense. Something like Equine Acquisitions Group. I stared at it, my mind scrambling. What could cost $700,000 that wasn't property or a business investment he discussed? A car? No, he bought cars through the company. Art? Not his style. My first thought wasn't infidelity. It was some complex business deal I didn't understand, maybe something risky. I felt a prickle of unease, not betrayal, but financial worry. I waited until he got home. He was tired, loosened his tie as he came in. "Hey," he said, that familiar, weary sound. I held the statement out to him, my finger on the line item. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He took the statement, his eyes scanning. His face didn't change expression at first. Just stillness. A kind of blankness that I hadn't seen before, not on him. Then, a subtle shift. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered away from mine, just for a second. "Business," he said, his voice flat. Too flat. "An investment. Nothing for you to worry about." $700,000? I pressed. "That's a big investment. What kind of business?" He sighed, a sound of impatience. "It's complicated. It's handled." "It's fine." He handed the statement back, walked past me, heading for his study. The door closed, softly but firmly. That was the first lie. The first stone in the wall he was building between us. I stood there, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. An investment? That word felt cold, dismissive. $700,000 wasn't pocket change. It wasn't a nothing for you to worry about kind of number. The unease settled into a heavy weight in my stomach.
He was hiding something.
It wasn't just a business deal. The name Equine Acquisitions Group. I went to my computer. A quick search. They weren't a standard investment firm. They were brokers. Horse brokers. High-end, specialized brokers dealing in bloodstock. My breath hitched. A horse? He bought a horse for $700,000? That was absurd. We weren't horse people. He never showed any interest in horses. The search results led me further. Websites for equestrian events, forums, articles about expensive horses. And names. Owners. Trainers. Breeders. I started cross-referencing. His name didn't appear anywhere obvious. But the brokers. I dug deeper into their website. They featured recent high-profile sales, sometimes with photos, sometimes just descriptions. There was one sale, finalized around the date on the statement. A prize-winning show jumper. Known for its lineage, its potential. The description matched the scale of the price. Its name was Odyssey. The cold dread began to bloom in my chest, a toxic flower spreading its roots. Why would he buy such a horse?
Who was it for?
Not for him. Not for me. He didn't have a secret passion for equestrian sports he'd hidden for 2 decades. The only logical explanation, the one my mind fought against with frantic energy, was that it was for someone else. And the only someone else who would warrant a $700,000 gift from a married man was. I didn't confront him directly about the horse then. The flat denial about the statement, the closed study door, had already told me he wasn't going to offer the truth. My instincts, honed by years of navigating the subtleties of our marriage, screamed danger. Instead, I started watching. Listening. I checked phone bills, less revealing than they used to be, everything text or app-based now. I checked his car's GPS history when I could make an excuse to use it. I looked for hotel loyalty program statements, for restaurant receipts that weren't local. It was like piecing together a shattered mirror. Each tiny shard reflected a distorted image, but when held together, the pattern began to emerge. The frequent late nights at the office that didn't correlate with any major project deadlines I knew of. The new scent on his clothes sometimes, something floral and sweet, not my perfume. The way he guarded his phone, face down on surfaces, screen locking instantly. And the trips. Short, 2-day trips to cities known for equestrian events. He said they were business conferences. I checked the dates. Checked the event schedules. And there it was. Major horse shows. The Mistress. I didn't know her name yet.
Didn't know what she looked like.
But I knew she existed. And I knew she rode horses. A rider good enough, perhaps, to warrant a $700,000 animal. The sheer audacity of it twisted something inside me. It wasn't just the infidelity. It was the scale of it, the public nature of her passion intersecting with his secret spending, the cold, calculated lie he'd told me. He hadn't just slept with someone else. He'd built a whole other life, a lavish one, with my shared money, right under my nose. The days that followed were a blur of quiet agony. I went through the motions. Smiled, cooked dinner, asked about his day. Inside, I was screaming. Every touch felt like a violation. Every lie he told, about his schedule, about his tiredness, about anything at all, felt like a poison dart. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My mind was a hamster wheel of frantic, painful thoughts.
How long? Who was she?
How could he? How could I have been so blind? I considered confronting him again, laying out the evidence. But the memory of his closed face, the dismissive, nothing to worry about, stopped me. What would that achieve? A confession soaked in crocodile tears? More lies? I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break.
Not yet.
Instead, I channeled the pain into something cold and sharp. Research. I needed to know everything. About the horse. About her. About the stable. I spent hours online, late into the night after he'd gone to bed, ostensibly asleep next to me, but miles away. I found articles about the horse, Odyssey. Its show record, its trainer. And the trainer led me to the rider. Photos appeared. A woman, younger than me, slim, blonde, posed elegantly on Odyssey, ribbons adorning the bridle. Her name was Amelia. She was beautiful in that polished, athletic way. Seeing her face, seeing her with the horse he had paid for, was a fresh wave of nausea. She wasn't just a brief indiscretion. This was a lifestyle, an investment, a shared passion built on a foundation of lies and my financial contributions. I found her social media. It was public, full of pictures of Odyssey, training updates, show results, and subtle hints. Photos of flowers, expensive gifts, weekends away, often geotagged in the same places he'd claimed to be on business trips. She never posted pictures of him, of course. They were careful, in their own way. But the timeline, the locations, the expensive horse, it all coalesced into an undeniable, sickening truth. My husband, the man who shared my bed, had bought his mistress a $700,000 horse and was funding her equestrian career. The sheer scale of the betrayal felt surreal. It wasn't a cheap motel room and a hasty regret. It was calculated, sustained, and incredibly expensive. He was funding a whole other life, a whole other passion with another woman. And he had lied about it with a straight face, treating me like an inconvenience, a naive fool who shouldn't worry her pretty little head about hundreds of thousands of dollars. My initial reaction was pure, hot rage. I wanted to burn it all down, to send Amelia screenshots of our marriage license, to call his work, to empty our bank accounts. But a deeper, colder instinct held me back. What would happen then? He'd spin it.
He'd lie.
He'd try to control the narrative. And I'd be left with the wreckage, potentially penniless after a brutal divorce battle, while he and Amelia rode off into the sunset on their $500,000 steed.
No.
That wasn't enough. Breaking things was easy. Building something stronger, something they couldn't touch, that was the challenge. My focus shifted from the pain of the betrayal to the mechanics of the situation. The horse was an asset, a very expensive asset. Where was it kept? Amelia's social media provided the answer. Frequent tags at a specific stable, Chestnut Hill Stables. I looked it up. It was an old, established place, well-regarded, private. Not cheap. Of course not. Only the best for Odyssey and his rider. I started visiting the stable, not going in at first, just driving by, parking on the road, watching. Horse trailers, expensive cars, riders in crisp attire. It felt like a different world, one of privilege and leisure. And somewhere in there was my money, walking around on four hooves, carrying the woman who had stolen my husband's time, affection, and wealth. It felt grotesque, surreal. I saw her there once. Amelia, leading Odyssey from a barn. She looked happy, effortlessly graceful. A pang shot through me, sharp and unexpected. Not of jealousy for her, but for the life she was living, built on a foundation of lies. And then a flicker of something else. The stable itself. The buildings were old, but well-maintained. The grounds were extensive. It had a history, a reputation. A new thought began to form, small and tentative at first, then growing, solidifying into a hard, glittering object in my mind. The stable. What if? I started researching the stable itself. Not just online, but discreetly. Public records. Property ownership. The owner was an older man, established in the equestrian community. Was it possible? I used a contact I had, someone who worked in commercial real estate, a casual friend I trusted implicitly. I asked him, theoretically at first, about valuing equestrian properties. He gave me some general information. Then I asked about specific properties just out of curiosity. I said, Chestnut Hill Stables. He got back to me a few days later. Funny you should ask, he said. Heard a whisper about Chestnut Hill. The owner's getting on. Might be looking to sell quietly. Keep it off the market initially, find the right buyer. Don't want to spook the horses or the clients. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a possibility. A long shot, perhaps, but a possibility. A way to strike back, not just at him, not just at her, but at the very foundation of their gilded, secret life. The stable wasn't just where the horse lived. It was where she belonged, where her community was, where her entire identity as a rider was centered. Taking the stable, that would be different. That wouldn't just be taking money back. That would be taking their ground. The shift inside me was profound. The crippling pain, the humiliation, the fear. It didn't vanish, but it was overlaid with something else. Focus. Determination. The cold clarity of a predator spotting its prey. I stopped feeling like a victim. I started feeling like a strategist. I still hadn't told him I knew. I maintained the facade. It was excruciatingly difficult. Every meal felt like a performance. Every conversation a tightrope walk over an abyss of unspoken truths. But the secrecy became my armor. He thought I was oblivious. He thought he was getting away with it. Let him. Let him feel safe. Let him continue to pour money into his mistress's hobby, secure in his deception. The more he invested in that life, the more leverage I would have when I pulled the rug out from under him. I hired a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer yet. A quiet, discreet lawyer who specialized in property law and complex transactions. I explained the situation carefully, omitting the most painful personal details at first, focusing on the financial aspects. The hidden asset, the mistress, the potential stable purchase. He was cautious, laid out the risks. Buying a multi-million-dollar property required significant capital. How would I finance it? Much of our wealth was tied up in joint accounts, joint investments, things he could potentially freeze or fight over. This was the deepening crisis. I had a plan, a potentially brilliant one, but executing it seemed impossible. He controlled the money, or at least the money I knew about. If I filed for divorce now, he would lock everything down. I needed funds, substantial funds, that he couldn't touch, couldn't anticipate. All seemed lost. My grand plan felt like a child's drawing, nice on paper, but impossible to build in the real world. I spent weeks poring over old financial records. My own, separate accounts from before the marriage, small inheritances, investments I'd made independently over the years that he paid little attention to. It wasn't enough. Not even close to the kind of money needed for a major property acquisition. Despair gnawed at me.
Was this it?
Was I just going to have to settle for a standard divorce, fight over the crumbs he was willing to part with, and watch him continue his life with Amelia and her expensive horse? Then I remembered something else. My family's old property. Not the house I grew up in, but a piece of undeveloped land my grandmother had left me years ago. It was out in the country, not valuable enough for him to ever take notice of, just a forgotten asset on a tax bill. I'd never considered selling it. It felt like a connection to the past, a safety net I didn't think I'd ever need. I had it quietly appraised. The value had increased significantly over the years, more than I ever imagined. It wasn't $700,000 or even enough to buy the stable outright, but it was a substantial amount. And it was mine. Truly mine, legally and emotionally separate from him and our shared life. It was a starting point. The turning point came during a sleepless night. I was staring at the ceiling, listening to his quiet breathing beside me, the sound that now felt like a betrayal in itself. The despair lifted, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my future. He had used his money, his power, his lies to build his mistress a sanctuary. I would use whatever I had, whatever I could find, to take that sanctuary away. The land, the stable, the plan solidified. I would sell the land, leverage whatever I could from my own assets, maybe take out a loan I could manage, whatever it took. I wouldn't just get half of what he left me in a divorce. I would take something he valued, something he never in a million years would expect me to touch. I would buy the stable. I met with the property lawyer again. I laid out the funds I could access, the potential sale of the land. He adjusted his initial cautious stance. It was still risky. The stable owner might have other offers. I had to move fast, quietly, and decisively. We put together an offer, structured in a way that was appealing to the owner. A quick sale, minimal fuss, a clean transaction. The lawyer handled all communication, keeping my name out of it initially. I was an anonymous buyer, interested in maintaining the stable's character, respecting its history. Everything was done through shell companies and intermediaries, creating layers of anonymity. It felt like a spy novel, except the stakes were my shattered life. The process was agonizingly slow and terrifyingly fast all at once. Waiting for the owner's response, arranging the financing, the due diligence on the property. Every step was fraught with the risk of exposure. What if he found out? What if the stable owner mentioned it to someone in the close-knit equestrian world who knew my husband or Amelia? What if my husband saw something, a transaction, a document, anything that tipped him off? I lived on adrenaline and black coffee. The facade at home became even more critical. I was cheerful, perhaps overly so. I made plans for the future, talked about things we could do together, knowing I was building a foundation of lies for the impending earthquake. He seemed relaxed, perhaps relieved that I hadn't pressed him further about the credit card statement, assuming I'd accepted his flimsy explanation or simply forgotten about it. He was blind, utterly blind, to the storm gathering around him. The land sale went through. The funds were secured. The offer on Chestnut Hill Stables was accepted. I signed the papers in a sterile conference room, the air conditioning humming softly. The stack of documents was even thicker this time. When I signed my name, it wasn't just signing a contract. It felt like signing my Declaration of Independence. The stable was mine. The date for the official transfer of ownership, the closing date, was set. It was in 2 weeks. 2 weeks until I owned the ground his mistress's $700,000 horse stood on. Planning the reveal required careful thought. I didn't want a shouting match in our living room. I wanted it public. I wanted him to feel the full weight of his actions, the public humiliation he had inflicted on me, amplified and reflected back onto him. The stable. That was the place. His sanctuary, their meeting ground. I arranged a meeting with the stable manager for the day after the closing. A formal handover, a chance to meet the staff, discuss operations. I knew Amelia would be there that day. Her riding schedule was publicly posted on the stable's website, a detail I now found both infuriating and incredibly useful. I also knew my husband often met her there. Sometimes he'd stay in the office while she rode, or they'd have coffee in the small lounge area. I checked his calendar, subtly, when he left it open on his desk. Yes. He had a block of time marked Chestnut Hill, Amelia. He was meeting Amelia at my stable. On the day after I took ownership. I invited my divorce lawyer to join me for the handover meeting. He understood the strategy. This wasn't just about property transfer anymore. This was about leverage. This was about demonstrating the extent of my knowledge, the depth of his deception, and the new reality of the situation as we headed into divorce proceedings. The day arrived. The drive to the stable felt unreal. My hands were clammy on the wheel, my heart hammering. But beneath the anxiety was a core of steel. I wasn't the woman who had stared, heartbroken, at a credit card statement anymore. I was the woman who had quietly, methodically, bought a multi-million-dollar property right out from under her cheating husband and his mistress. I pulled up the gravel drive, the same one I had watched him drive up so many times. The crunch of the tires sounded different today. It sounded like footsteps on broken glass. His car was there, parked in its usual spot. Good. He was inside. My lawyer's car pulled in behind me. We got out. The air smelled of hay, horses, and money. We walked towards the main office. My lawyer was calm, professional. I felt a strange duality. Part of me was a trembling mess, the other part was detached, observing the scene as if from a distance. The stable manager, a pleasant woman named Sarah, met us at the door. She looked a little nervous. She knew there was a new owner. She didn't know it was me. We stepped inside the office. It was small, cozy, smelled of coffee and old paper. And there they were, sitting together on a small sofa, looking through papers. Amelia, in riding breeches and boots, her blonde hair in a neat ponytail. And him, my husband, looking relaxed, smiling at something she was saying. They looked up as we entered. Sarah introduced us. Mr. Davis, Ms. Lane, this is the new owner, Mrs. Helena Miller, and her attorney. His smile froze. Amelia's eyes widened slightly.
They stared at me.
Not recognizing me at first, maybe. Just seeing a stranger, an official-looking party. Then, recognition flickered in his eyes. Disbelief.
Confusion.
His face went slack. Helena, he stammered. What are you doing here? I walked further into the room, stopping a few feet away from them. My lawyer stood beside me, a silent, solid presence. I didn't look at Amelia. My gaze was fixed on him. His perfectly tailored shirt, his expensive watch, the face I had slept beside for a quarter of a century. I'm here, I said, my voice steady level, because I own this stable now. The silence that followed was deafening. Amelia looked from me to him, her face a mask of confusion. He just stared, his mouth slightly open. He thought I was oblivious. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was safe at home, wrapped in my ignorance. What are you talking about? He finally managed, his voice rough. My lawyer stepped forward slightly. Mr. Davis, he said, his tone polite but firm. As of yesterday afternoon, the ownership of Chestnut Hill Stables Incorporated, including all property, assets, and ongoing concerns, was transferred to my client, Mrs. Helena Miller. We're here for the formal handover meeting with the stable manager. He looked at the lawyer, then back at me. The color drained from his face. He paled, then flushed crimson. His eyes narrowed, fixing on me with a look of pure venom I had never seen directed at me before. The relaxed man from moments ago was gone, replaced by something ugly and desperate. You bought this? He choked out.
How?
You don't have that kind of money. I allowed myself a small, humorless smile. Oh, I found some, I said softly. You'd be surprised what you can find when you start looking, especially when someone's been investing our shared resources elsewhere. I glanced pointedly at Amelia, who was now sitting rigidly, her face pale, watching us like a spectator at a train wreck. You bitch, he exploded, standing up abruptly. You conniving bitch. You went behind my back. He was yelling now, his voice echoing in the small office. Sarah, the stable manager, flinched, looking horrified. Amelia stood up too, backing away slightly, putting distance between herself and his sudden, violent rage. Behind your back? I repeated, my voice still calm, a stark contrast to his shouting. You bought your mistress a $700,000 horse with our money, lied about it, and built a whole other life right under my nose. That's going behind my back. This. I gestured around the office, the stable beyond. This is just cleaning up. Cleaning up? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You think this changes anything? You wasted a fortune. You can't run a stable. What are you going to do? Muck out stalls yourself? I'll hire people, I said simply. Competent people. People who aren't financially entangled in unethical ways. My eyes met Amelia's for a brief second. She looked away quickly. This is insane, he roared, running a hand through his hair. You did this just to hurt me? Just for revenge. Revenge is a nice bonus. I admit it, the cold satisfaction finally starting to seep in, warming me from the inside out. But mostly, it's about control. You took control of our finances, our life, our story. You decided I didn't need to know, that I wasn't important enough to be honest with. You thought you could just buy your happiness, no matter who it hurt. Well, turns out, I can buy things too. His face was purple with rage. He took a step towards me, his hands clenched. My lawyer subtly shifted his weight, ready. But he stopped himself, his eyes darting to Sarah, to Amelia, to the open door. He remembered where he was, who was watching. This isn't over, Helena, he snarled, lowering his voice, but it was still tight with fury. You think you've won? You've just made things 10 times worse. I'll bury you in court. I'll fight you, for every single penny. You'll regret this. I doubt it, I said, and I meant it. The fear was gone now, replaced by a strange sense of liberation. I had faced the monster, Not with tears or pleas, but with a move he never saw coming. My lawyer and I will be in touch regarding the divorce settlement. I imagine my position has significantly improved. He stood there, breathing heavily, looking from me to Amelia, who looked utterly bewildered and, frankly, terrified. The stable manager was frozen in place. The air crackled with the aftermath of his explosion. He knew. He knew he was caught. Blindsided. He had made himself vulnerable, anchoring his mistress's expensive asset in a physical location, and I had simply bought the ground beneath their feet. His $700,000 horse was now boarding at my stable. He spun around, grabbed Amelia's arm roughly. "Come on," he snapped at her. She stumbled, grabbed her riding helmet. He practically dragged her out of the office, not looking back. The door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet. Sarah, the stable manager, let out a shaky breath. "Mrs. Miller," she started, looking unsure. "It's okay, Sarah," I said, turning to her. The cold edge softened slightly. "She was just caught in the crossfire. Let's get to work."
I'm Helena.
And there's a lot to discuss about running this place. The storm had passed, but the landscape was irrevocably changed. Stepping out of the office later that day, the sun was breaking through the clouds. It felt different. The stable wasn't just a symbol of his betrayal anymore. It was mine. A complex, expensive, challenging asset, but mine. The divorce was less of a fight than he threatened. Once his lawyers understood that I owned the stable, the leverage shifted entirely. The horse, Odyssey, became a complicated issue. It was technically Amelia's, but its value, paid for with marital funds, was clearly established. More importantly, its home was now my property. There were quiet negotiations. Ultimately, the horse was sold.
I insisted on it.
I didn't want that animal here, a constant reminder. The proceeds factored into the settlement. Amelia disappeared from the scene, taking her riding career elsewhere, away from Chestnut Hill. I never spoke to her directly again. I had no need to. She was just a symptom, not the disease. He paid. He paid dearly, financially, and in terms of his reputation. The story, carefully leaked by my lawyer, with my permission, of course, circulated through certain circles. The man who bought his mistress a horse, only to have his wife by the stable. It became a cautionary tale. Owning the stable isn't the fairy tale ending some might imagine. It's hard work. There are staff to manage, horses to care for, bills to pay. It's a business. But it's a business I control. I kept Sarah on as manager. She's excellent. I've learned about the world of horses, a world I never expected to inhabit. It's fascinating, demanding, and strangely healing, building something new on the ruins of the old. The satisfaction isn't a constant, gleeful rush. It's quieter,
Deeper.
It's in walking the grounds, seeing the care the horses receive, knowing I made this possible. It's in the quiet confidence of running a successful operation. It's in the knowledge that I wasn't broken, I wasn't defeated, I didn't just survive. I built something bigger, stronger, and entirely mine, out of the wreckage he created. The $700,000 horse was just the key that unlocked the door. The stable? The stable was the whole damn house. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.